And we believe in autonomy here, so you bring your own chairs. Thank you.
All right. Can you guys hear me? Is the mic? Yeah. Mic's going? Perfect. This is a fireside chat without the fire. So, and with a bunch of people watching us, that should be fun. Just by way of intro, my name's Richard. I head up, just in my time check, I head up customer identity at OKTA. I've been with OKTA, I came to OKTA via the acquisition of Auth0, and I sort of established the customer identity practice across Asia Pac and Japan. So I've been lucky enough to work with lots of customers, including these fine folk, over many, many years. So the objective of this session was really to have a non-scripted, definitely non-scripted, discussion around their journey of implementing a customer identity service and the challenges they had along the way and what they learned. So hopefully you all can learn from that as well. Definitely not a sales pitch. This is not don't sell, please. Tell them all the warts and all around what you went on through the journey. Sound like a plan? Thumbs up? All good? Perfect. Okay, great. So maybe start off introducing yourself, Glenn.
Yes. Okay. So, yep, my name's Glenn Metherall.
Beauty before age. We'll do that.
I'm not sure of the age difference actually, but
that was close.
Anyway, yep. So yeah, I'm Glenn. I'm an engineering lead at Australia Post. I graduated from Monash University just over 20 years ago. So I've been working as a full stack dev for a majority of that time and an engineering lead over the last sort of 10, 12 years. So yeah, been at Australia Post for around 8 years now. Prior to that, I was at Census for a long time, and prior to that, sort of Motorola in the UK. But,
cool. Chris.
G'day. I am not Veronica Caife.
You're not?
No.
What happened?
Veronica unfortunately couldn't make it today.
So I am Chris. Okay.
So I'm Chris Chapman. I'm a solution architect. I've been with Australia Post for about almost 5 years now. Yep. Been on the identity journey with Australia Post for most of that time because it's been a bit of a long-running sort of process. So yeah, I work in the digital area alongside Glenn and about 160 other people, I think, in the train. Before that, worked in quite a few different industries, so superannuation, finance, logistics, a few things sort of at Coles and those sorts of things. So yeah.
Cool, great. Thanks for joining. So why don't we just share, most people know Australia Post, I'm guessing, but can you tell us a little bit about, in the area that you're in, which is digital, just a little bit about the stacks, the architecture, the experiences, you've got APIs, etc. So if you can tell a little bit about the architecture, I'll let either you take, are you on-prem, in the cloud, just to give a sense of what stickers I've got on my laptop if I'm working in your teams, right? Sure. What it looks like. Yeah,
okay. So in terms of the tech stack, so yep, for the digital side anyway, we're 100% in AWS. You know, we have a bit of GCP sort of work with a lot of data and things like that. But yeah, in terms of I guess the back end side of things, we've got Kong, and we've got our Kong guy down here.
Okay.
We
sitting
use
proudly up front.
We've got Kubernetes, Fargate, so containerized sort of architecture, sort of Java, Kotlin, that sort of thing. Front end, it's a bit of a variety there, so a lot of sort of Angular apps, but right now we're sort of in the process of moving everything to React.
React, okay. And customers, so consumers like me, tracking my post and a mobile app, web apps as well, APIs,
yep.
B2B.
So not so much of the APIs in our area. So we have other teams that deal very heavily in APIs, such as our lodgements team, who basically provide the services for all the big merchants that want to send parcels through Australia Post.
Right.
We do also do tracking and notifications as well. So if you've got an email saying your parcel's on its way, then that's coming from this team as well. There's a couple of related areas as well that we kind of look after as well. So we've got our online shop. We've got the public website, which is like a content managed system. Most of the stuff within our sort of immediate area, they're all single page apps though. So it's like running in the browser, calling APIs through the API gateway. And so, the sorts of considerations with those sorts of architectures is a little bit different to something like the online shop, where it's more the client server model with, a back end that can look after stuff.
Got it. Okay. All right, so that gives us some context. And how many? 180 people on the train? Did you say?
Something like that.
Yeah,
Okay,
so
not
around
bad.
7 dev teams.
Okay, wow, big team. So let's get to the meat of the conversation. If you can cast your mind back, and probably you're still, I'm sure we haven't solved world peace either. What was the problem? Why, what was the issue that you were experiencing? What made you look to solve customer identity? And maybe I'll give some context, right? So customer identity is this nebulous term which I had no idea what it meant until I went into this space. It's basically if you're building an app or an API or mobile web, think of sign-up, registration, forgotten password, multi-factor, single sign-on, single sign-out, step-up auth, all that stuff related to authentication, authorization, and user management. They generally term it, like for externally facing apps, they call it customer identity. So should have done that at the front anyway, but yeah. So tell us, what was the problem?
Well, yeah, so as you say, it goes back a long way. So it's something we've been looking at for a long time. So we have, we've had an aging authentication platform. We had, a lot more customers sort of coming in. It's something we knew we needed to grow. It didn't have the capabilities that we needed to integrate with, some of the big retailers or even, just service the amount of people we've got. People just looking up their parcels, so everyday people are there. So I think that all kind of came to a head when COVID hit as well. The traffic just went through the roof from there, both logistically and technologically. So
Right.
The amount of parcel traffic was huge.
Can you give us just an idea, I think you can, of the size and scale, like how many people use AusPost apps and any idea of the growth? Or
The numbers are obviously hard to know for sure, like who's an actual person and who's just like what's a dummy account or a duplicate account. But I think there's currently around about 11 million people
11 to 12
with
million
with an
customers, I
AusPost
think, yep.
account.
Okay.
So I couldn't tell you what percentage is active. I think it's
Yeah, so
fairly
I
high.
just looked up. Yeah, so I looked up this morning. The last 7 days, I think we've had just 8.5 million people log in,
Okay.
and that
Right.
can be across web and mobile.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's a combination of consumers as well as those
Yeah,
other
yeah.
sort of business scenarios we're talking about.
Got it. So you had an existing identity service. Was it a single identity service underpinning all Australia Post, or you had multiple? Or
It was a composite package, but it was servicing pretty much all of Australia Post for the customer side.
okay.
Yeah.
And so, what? I know you said aging. Okay, growth. Can you be more specific? I'm sort of digging in a little bit. Like, well,
So
like,
the one of the biggest issues we had was that it was an on-prem platform.
Okay.
So we were responsible for all of the capacity planning, scaling, performance, patching, everything.
nursing, watering, feeding.
All that sort of stuff, yeah.
Yeah.
So it became very, very difficult. It was one of those things where it would have required millions of dollars just to, keep it up to date and uplifted and everything. And, to Glenn's point, we were looking at increased volumes and it just wasn't going to be able to stack up. So
Got it.
when we went to look at how we could actually evolve our identity platform,
Yep.
one of the key criteria that we went for with the RFP process was it had to be SaaS.
Got
So
it.
it had to be a fully
Cool.
vendor managed in the cloud platform that could scale to whatever our needs were.
Got it. And you've got pretty complicated requirements. You guys are
You
a
could say that.
complicated customer, right? You're not like a retailer, username, password, maybe a bit of MFA, etc. You're fairly complicated. Lots of apps, lots of APIs, and lots of different customers. And from memory, with your existing platform, you'd done a lot of work around the edges. I think you actually rolled your own SDK or a couple of SDKs, right? So the
we were
developers
just
could.
talking through some of that earlier. I think we counted, there's at least 4 I can think of off the top of my head that were, they were built because developers were frustrated. They wanted to modernise. They wanted to, use like OIDC patterns and
OIDC, everybody know what OIDC is?
OpenID Connect, yes.
OpenID Connect, yeah. Okay, nodding heads, that's good.
So
Okay.
they wanted to use a lot of that because they needed to be able to just service the loads and so fast forward to now, so we've moved on to Auth0. That's one of our issues in that we're sort of unpicking those now as we sort
All
of
those,
move on to
it doesn't flick a switch and all work. So
Yeah.
okay, so recognised problem, COVID hit, really accentuated the issues. Said right, let's solve this. just to get a sense of, a business case, and I don't know if maybe either of you weren't involved, but how do you build a business case? Were you involved in building a business case, or was it just like, no, we've got to do it, or?
Yeah, look, I was involved in the earlier stages, not the later stages. So
Okay.
a lot of it was built around security and risk and customer experience.
Okay.
So it's not necessarily something that you can put a dollar customer value on.
Right.
But the fact is, when you've got security risks, when you've got a really poor customer experience, when you're not even sure whether your identity platform is going to be able to keep up with a number of customers.
Outages, maybe.
Yeah, all that sort of stuff, yeah.
Yeah.
Very good.
Sort of remember it somewhere. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, so, the business case was basically, we have to do this. We don't have any
Okay.
other choice, so, yeah.
Got it. Okay, so it's sort of, you didn't have to go convincing people around. And I think it was the consumer business that drove that requirement way back when, right?
Yeah,
There was the exec sponsorship. Okay.
Yeah.
So let's fast forward a lot of history and go through. You went out and scanned the market, and a few things happened, and you landed on deploying OKTA. That's great. Thank you very much. OKTA/Auth0, I'll say both, since we're now one company. So, thinking before that, you went RFP, and for the people in the room that are thinking about these projects, what sort of requirements should they consider? And please, not a sales pitch, like, hey, if you're going out to market, there's lots of good tech out there. What are some of the things that they should consider in a platform that they should really go, if I need this, I need that? Either or.
I think a big one for me that came out very early was that you can't underestimate how important it is to be developer friendly. Like if you get a really fantastic platform, but it's difficult to use and it's badly documented or something like that, it just won't get adopted. It'll increase the cost of the transition. It'll increase the time that it takes to get it out to market. So yeah, make sure it's developer friendly. Has to actually follow the industry standards really, really closely, because if you run into situations where you're trying to integrate with some third-party system and they follow the standards and your identity platform doesn't, then it's just not going to work. So,
Okay, so dev friendly, which means like great doco, great APIs, great SDKs, keep the developers happy, give them a free lunch as well.
And on that, another thing we looked at was, what is the community around it? Not just the documentation, but are there a lot of other developers engaged and looking at these forums?
Well,
and that's something we've found is really good.
And SaaS, you wanted something that you didn't have to patch, maintain, and worry about the uptime.
Yep.
Anything else that sort of comes to mind?
Well, to your point earlier about the complexity of Australia Post, we are a very complicated company. We've got lots of different businesses. You might not realise it, but you can get pet insurance through Australia Post. Bit of a free plug there. But there's lots of
Now I do. You can actually get pet insurance through Qantas, believe it or not, as well.
I didn't know that.
Not that I wanted to give them a plug, but just FYI. Australia Post as well, by the way.
Okay. But yeah, there are lots of different parts of Australia Post, and they have different requirements. If you're talking about our financial services type products, there's high risk. You need that extra level of assurance. You might want to make sure that the session only lasts for 15 minutes, because you can't have them staying logged in forever.
Okay.
But if you're a consumer wanting to track your parcel, you don't want to have to get logged out every 15 minutes. And unfortunately, one of the constraints of our current platform is that we have to go with the lowest common denominator, which means that we have to apply 15 minutes across the board, because we don't have that ability to do different things. So one of the criteria that we had with a new platform is that we needed to have the ability to actually be flexible and cater for the different needs of the different parts of our business.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Integration with other platforms, like identity, does it like people sort of go, is this a CRM system, or like how does it interact with the CRM system, or what is it like, or integration with other platforms? Just to think about, any views on integration?
Well, I guess on top of the those patterns for authentication, we've also got we do integrate with some of Australia's biggest retailers. So we have to federate to them. They want their customers to be able to log in, track where things are as well. So it was important that the platform we chose serviced all of these different scenarios.
Got it.
It is also, it's an interesting opportunity. So when you're changing identity platforms, I think, Glenn, you'd probably be able to give more detail, but
let me just stoke the fire. Hang on a second. Go. Sorry.
The old identity platform that we kind of had to build ourselves around the legacy platform, there were certain decisions that were made as part of that in hindsight, they were probably not great. They were probably too tightly coupled to our CRM, for example. And so when we've moved to OKTA and Auth0, we've kind of had the opportunity to say, okay, what is the correct sort of dividing line between what the identity platform should do in your CRM? So
what is that dividing line? Because that that often comes up? Like, what's your perspective, right, living and breathing it?
My view would be that the identity platform should deal with your user credentials only, and that should give you the linkage into your CRM system, but the customer record is entirely separate. So there might be a handful of attributes that you want in your identity platform, like name, just so that you know who you're dealing with, but everything else should just belong in the CRM.
So you have some key, like an ID number or something that, and there's integration and calling. Okay.
Exactly.
Yeah, so that sort of thing we've tried to keep as simple as possible, and you know, and I mean, that's just been like a whole lot of discussions in itself, trying to narrow down exactly what we store in OKTA/Auth0 and what goes elsewhere.
Yeah, I've had some interesting customers. We've got a streaming customer, and when they first started looking at us, they were thinking they were going to store in their profile what point in the last movie that they were watching in our platform, and storing that as like almost session information. It's like, no, you had to recorrect that. So, okay, and so migration, did you think about migration as a requirement?
We've thought a lot about migration, yes.
Still thinking about it.
Right? It's a tough nut to crack.
Yeah, so if you look at our sort of whole approach, so initially we're looking at front end, looking at back end, and it sort of looked at all the work that we had to do, and we sort of very quickly realised that there's no way we could do a big bang approach and just go from one to the other.
You can't point all your apps to a new identity service overnight.
No.
And migrate 12 million users overnight.
No, we're talking hundreds of APIs, hundreds of front end apps. 50 different teams.
Got it.
Yeah, no chance of doing that.
So how do you do it? What's the plan?
We came up with the idea of effectively migrating the users, but really doing like a replumbing sort of exercise. So we just repointed the back end services across, so it was wasn't visible to users or front end apps at all. They just keep using the same endpoints, everything that they've always used. And so we move across. So that got us off the old platform and into...
So how does that work? I'm the slow guy, right, if you guys haven't figured it out. So you got your existing identity service. All these apps and APIs are pointing to that. You got your brand shiny new one. Well, how do you...
We weren't actually pointing directly to the underlying service. That's the key thing. We had our custom wrapper around it. So we've changed the custom wrapper so that it looks the same, but it's now pointing over at Okta instead of at the old legacy one.
Okay, and so, so all your apps were using that existing wrapper.
Yeah.
So you just changed your wrapper where it was pointing to, is that right?
Most of.
Yes.
Most of. There's still some rats and mice lying around that you've got to deal with.
Yep.
Okay, all right. That's actually quite different, what I would say, to some other customers have done, because they don't have that wrapper there.
Yeah.
What they've done is they've got their apps, they're pointing to the existing identity service, and then Okta/Auth0 becomes a proxy. So it just almost federates to it, and then you start pointing the apps one by one at it, and then migrate the users. So you haven't migrated any users yet, or?
No, the users have been migrated, so everything is in Okta now, or Auth0, but the difference is that we're still largely using the old API. And the reason we can't just point them to the new one is because you still need to have something in common. If you're going to use Auth0 to kind of proxy an old service, you need to be using the standards like OAuth or OpenID Connect.
And they're not.
We don't have that. That's coming through our custom API, so the custom API has to be the wrapper that now gets replumbed.
And will that stay there forever? No.
Hopefully not.
Okay, all right.
No, so that's what we're still looking at now, is sort of our phase 2 sort of journey, is now upgrading the front end to use the proper standards.
The proper standards and stuff.
Go direct, Okay. So over time, it'll get phased out.
So what's been the lessons learned in terms of the implementation? What would you do differently if you had your time again? Or what do you think, oh, wow, that was surprising, that worked, that was well, or that was an unforeseen benefit? Anything that you can share with people sitting around the campfire with us?
I guess there's a lot of lessons. If I look back, I sort of wish we'd sort of integrated a lot earlier.
Right. Why is that? What do you mean?
So something I was sort of talking about earlier, where out of frustration, developers they built newer services to replicate, OpenID Connect interfaces. So, they were great and they work really well. But now that we are on this new platform, we've got to go back, unpick those, and move across.
Dealing with that technical debt.
Yeah, so that's
exactly
right.
right.
So if we'd integrate earlier, then we wouldn't have had that problem, for
Got
example.
it. Okay. Anything else? Any other views? Or any advice for people considering this?
Well, I think it's not something I would do differently, because I think we've actually done a really good job. And Veronica, who couldn't be here, has been instrumental to a lot of the analysis. But we've done a really good job of actually understanding in quite a lot of detail how exactly we have a bit of the old world and a bit of the new world working together. So
Right.
that's actually the single most complicated thing about what we're doing, because we have to make sure that if we've modernised an app and it's talking to an old API and a new API, it's got to work. If it's an old app and talking to a mixture, everything has to be seamless, and you have to be able to make it work without having to go and change every single application. And so that's taken a lot of technical analysis. It's taken a lot of very careful planning. It's taken a little bit of kind of custom integration work just to make it all happen seamlessly. But that I think has been key to what's going to make this work. And if we hadn't done that, it would have been it has to be a big bang deployment.
Which would almost be impossible,
Yeah.
to be honest,
We
right?
wouldn't even be able to
The
do
only
it.
other customer I know that did a big bang that I was worried about was News Corp. They think they did 18 apps in one night and migrated everything and pointed out it wasn't for the faint-hearted. People didn't sleep. It's definitely not phased. I'll take a phased approach any day of the week. So
18 apps wouldn't even cover our area, would it?
no,
Yeah,
they're a little bit
wouldn't cover
smaller.
my team.
Okay, what's the future hold for you guys? What's next in the identity world that you can share?
We're looking forward to actually finishing the modernisation of all the applications, because that opens up a whole bunch of new capabilities that we can't currently do. So,
Such as, like, what sort of...
So flexible sessions is one thing.
Yeah.
So being able to stay logged in for tracking your parcel for 12 months, but having a 15-minute limit on the personal information within your account management or something.
Right.
Multi-factor authentication is coming up a lot. So we have parts of the business who have customers who say we must have MFA, but there's always a risk with if you've got only half of your applications migrated,
Yep.
then your login experience can only offer MFA that's coming through Auth0.
Right.
And so if
It's
you're
disjointed.
are you putting bars on your windows but leaving your front door open type thing? So you've got to modernise everything.
Oh,
So once we're done, then we can start
Do
turning
that
on
and
some
turn
of
on all
these
these new
features.
features that you've got.
Yep.
Okay, perfect. I might open it up for questions if that's... I don't know if you've got a roaming mic or if there's any questions. Man down the back. Yep, got a hand raised. Got a mic? I don't know. There comes the man at the back. Look at him. How good is he?
Hi. I came a little bit late, but I've been listening to your journey there. I don't mean to be a bit controversial here, and I know you're...
Oh, come on. Let's bring controversy in the room. Why
I was
not?
controversial yesterday. I apparently got too much credit for that.
Come on.
You guys have worked on identity. You've got a whole bunch of platforms you're working on, plus some products that allow for tying into other services. What's AusPost's take on the DID or the decentralized ID? It's a new technology that's been certified by I think W3C, and I think it basically says or allows the identity responsibility to be owned at the user level, and then the authorization is done at the product level. So that kind of takes away a lot of your responsibility of having to do what you've done. So you've put in all this effort, systems starting to change. What is your take on that, and what is AusPost's perspective on that matter, knowing that things might have to change?
Look, it's an interesting point. OpenID Connect and OAuth have been around for many, many years, and it's taken us this long to catch up with those standards. I think there will be some benefits in future to having decentralized IDs and things like that. But even if it's a standard, it doesn't mean it's actually in wide use yet. So if we were to try and adopt something that right now would be on the cutting edge of something which is not really used by our customers, and we wouldn't really be addressing the key pain points that we have right now in terms of our custom solution. So look, it's certainly something that we can consider for future, but right now we get bigger benefit out of introducing a standards-based platform, and then we can take the next step after that, which could be social identity, for example. Log in with your Apple ID or your Google ID, and then further down the track there might be a distributed ID element in there too. But it's to be perfectly honest, it's just probably not a priority for us in the short term.
The only thing I would add to that is if it is something that's prevalent that as a vendor we see across lots of our customers, we're going to enable it in the platform anyway, like social ID or whatever. So great question though. Any other questions? Yep.
Hey, a great talk. Could you talk about the customer impact when doing your user migration? What did it look like, and what is your thinking as you did that user migration from one identity platform to another? Did they all reset their passwords? Was there like a whole bunch of like pre, post, like hand-holding? Did you segment them by customer types, etc.?
Talk to that one.
Yeah, so no, yeah, good question. So we certainly had planned outages of certain systems. So yeah, things like any customer update, yeah, we couldn't allow that during the migration. So we'd sort of done a pre-run, so we knew how long it was going to take to migrate sort of 11, 12 million customers. I think it was around 24 hours for us. But yeah, so during that time, we still allowed people to log in, look up their parcels, see where that is, because that's like the most used service that we have. But yeah, you couldn't do things like change your first name, last name, any sort of updates. We just had an outage on those.
Did they have to reset their passwords?
Well, you probably remind me of the details, but we actually didn't import of the hashes from our legacy system. I can't remember whether you needed to add something to your product to support it or whether it was one of the supported ones, but we were actually able to bring the passwords over by migrating the hashes of the passwords, so there was actually no password reset required.
And there's another flow that you can use that users can migrate as they log in, so it's called a lazy migration as well. So you can do a bulk, as long as we support the hash, or you can do a lazy migration and the user doesn't know the difference. So, how are we going for time? We got time for one more? Are we done? One more.
Time for one more.
Yeah, perfect.
Do your internal staff use the same platforms, and how does that?
What a great question. Do you want me? I'll take that. Can I take that?
Sure.
Okay. So they use two different platforms, but what I would say is the reason being is there's rules for tools. You can't have one ring to rule them all. An employee identity platform is very different to a customer identity platform. They're very, very different. So good case in point, OKTA bought Auth0. OKTA is very well known for workforce identity. Auth0 and Auth0 is very well known for customer identity. They've got very different use cases. And in this case here, they use two different platforms to solve those two unique use cases.
Each app is integrated twice, or
No, one, go.
Yeah, so just quickly, we did actually at one point explore bringing the workforce and the customers together, and then we realised that was a mistake and we actually went back to separate. If we have an application where it's facing both customers and workforce, we just do federation. So we'll put Auth0 in front of it, and Auth0 will federate off to our workforce platform as well. So it's effectively Auth0 issues the tokens, but the identity is actually still stored in our workforce IDP.
So I'll sign in, it'll call, and Auth0 will go, oh, you're federating out to Active Directory or OKTA or whatever you're using, and then come back. So it's just federation.
Yep.
Make sense?
cool, yeah.
Cool. All right, give these great guys a round of applause. How about that? Thank you. Thanks, mate.